Good evening and welcome to the Fredonia Central School Board of Education School Board meeting for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Welcome everyone. We start our meetings every meeting with a pledge to the flag. So if you would please rise and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our first order of business is to, we need a motion to approve, to appoint clerk pro tem for this meeting. And who are we doing?
Mr. Rada.
Mr. Rada.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Rada. We set aside some time at the beginning of each meeting to hear from the public. The board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Concerns and comments during this session should be directly related to items listed on the proposed agenda for this meeting. Audience members seeking a response should complete a board correspondence sheet and return it to the clerk pro tem. Is there anyone who would like to address the board tonight? No? Okay, we'll close that out. We have a proposed agenda for tonight's meeting, which is a consent agenda. Adoption of the consent agenda upon a motion and a second and affirmative vote by members present approves each and every item so designated. However, prior to the adoption of the consent agenda, any board member may remove any item from the consent agenda. This item will then come up for discussion as part of the regular agenda. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite routine matters so that the board has more time to deal with substance matters. We're looking at an agenda, a consent agenda for line items 7 and 8, 7 being personnel and 8 being new business, but we are excluding items 7A and B out of the personnel. So those are not part of the consent agenda that we will be approving. Are there any items? Now, I guess we have to bring that forward.
I'll make that motion. I just have one change. 8C1, which is the request, 8C1, which is the request from Mrs. Merwin for the field trip.
Okay.
That's tentatively scheduled for spring break of 2021. Not coming up this year, but next year. So that, I think that's
Okay.
just a typo.
Page 5.
Yeah, page 5, towards the bottom.
Is that,
Oh, here's a little different one. Oh, you're looking at the minutes.
looking at the wrong
There you are.
week?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
AC1. And,
Here.
and is this, so what is the,
I think it's just the typo. It should be spring break 2021.
thank you. Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. And with that 2021?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Are there any other considerations to pull out by board members? No?
And we don't need to pull that out. I just wanted to note that that should stay. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. If everyone is okay with that, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Wonderful. We have an agenda which takes us to the minutes from the last meeting. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the October 22nd meeting?
So
and amended minutes from October 20th. You're okay with that, Mr. Hawes? Okay. And Mr.?
Chair will second it.
Okay. Is there any comments, corrections, concerns on those minutes? Okay. All those in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Wonderful. Which takes us to item number 6, the financial treasuries report. We've got a budget status report for September 2019.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple comments here. First of all, the question was raised at the last meeting regarding salary codes 1620.160 through 1620.163 and 1621.160 through 161. Those are salary codes for custodial maintenance. There was it was pointed out that there's one line that has a significant positive balance, another line that has a significant negative balance. I took a look through those. It was a coding issue. We made the changes to correct that coding issue. However, it has to be done in an open payroll period, and since the September reports were already closed, it can't appear on this report. When you see it on October, it does go back to the beginning of the year and fully corrects the question there. Second thing is I'd like to point out to the board, which is also not reflected in this report for September because we hadn't paid a BOCES bill yet. The first BOCES bill was paid after that. But our special education budget in BOCES for high-cost students is significantly over budget at this point. We've got 7 students different than what we budgeted for. 3 of them were students that we had pulled back during the budget process to continue their education at a kindergarten level with Buffalo Hearing and Speech. We found out in summer that the state was no longer allowing that to take place. We also have 1 student that was pulled back because the thought was that they'd be successful here, and that has not turned out to be the case. We have another student who was attending here who also has now been placed in BOCES, and we have 2 new arrivals to the district that are both high-cost individuals. So currently in that category, we are about $540,000 over budget, which is significant. The good news is in the areas of salaries, which include new hires and replacement of those individuals that had been here for some time and left to find other opportunities, we're about $110,000 to the good in that area. But overall, we're about $400,000 above projection right now in those 2 areas.
So I've got a question, John, in regards to September 20th, you sent us out the end of the year report for 2019, line items for reflecting the 160/20 and 160 and 161. There was a difference of $335,000 in excess, which is about 280% increase. What did you do with that money in regards to the change that you just made?
And which report was this on? I'm sorry.
Reflecting the budget status report that you are having us look at now, okay? And then comparing it to the end of last year, 2019, okay, there's $335,000 additional funds. That was my question originally, and why I had you look into this. So what did you do with those funds? When you changed
Obviously, I
those?
don't have that report here. My guess is that it was probably a similar coding issue, but I
So the
can't.
money had to be moved someplace because it all adds up to the budget. Where did you move it?
You caught me without an ability to respond because I don't have that report with me. If you had it, I could look at it and tell you.
Well, it's just the difference between 182,000 and 516,000 budgeted this year. Page 2.
If it'd be okay with the board, I'll take a look at this as the meeting goes on and I'll respond to that. That's right.
And we have a, are you okay with that, Commissioner? Okay. We have the revenue status report for September.
Mr. Roach, I just had a
I'm sorry.
question.
Yeah.
So the 540,000 that we're over budget, is that year to date, or that's what we're projecting for the full
That'll be
year?
projecting for the full year.
Projecting for the full year. Okay, thank you.
And could that change if these students move out of the district?
Yes. Or the other way, if we had additional students placed at BOCES.
Could we stay on the budget status report just
Yep,
for?
absolutely. Yep.
Question is, on page 3, we have the BOCES project. Is this the final year? Will we be retiring that $200,000 debt?
This is year 3 of the 3-year payments, yes.
All right, and that also kind of, someone speak if I'm out of order, but we had a board member speak in regards to the BOCES surplus that they had $16.8 million, and you spoke up to say that they're not supposed to carry a fund balance?
Technically, BOCES isn't to carry a fund balance. They do have the opportunity to have reserves as well.
Okay.
The general idea of BOCES is that they bill the districts for the service plus their administrative charges.
So, do you know if that money is actually surplus, or if it's part of the budget this year?
I would have no way to speak on their finances.
Right. Because it's an interesting point that the board member brought up, and then when you spoke to it, I think you thought out loud, or maybe you were just making a comment, but they weren't supposed to have those funds. Should we be asking for a refund? Because with 27 component districts, you're looking at about $620,000 per district.
Again, it's, without seeing it exactly what's laid out to me, I can't comment directly. We do get a BOCES refund based upon the services that we request and the services that we don't use every year.
So who would we look to look into that?
I could, or Mr. Certisio could ask BOCES for an explanation. But
Okay.
again, you know, we're talking about a number that we don't really know what the basis of it
Sure,
is.
I completely understand, but it's a starting point, because it seems like a large amount that they're carrying.
We'll look into it.
And if they created a reserve account to wipe out that excess, that would be acceptable or allowable.
They have similar regulations. BOCES is a little bit different in how they do things, but you know, I'm sure they're functioning within their realm, but it's a good question.
Okay. Anything else? Steve, you okay? Okay. And then the budget status report.
Revenue.
Revenue, excuse me. I'm saying one thing and reading a different. Revenue status report.
Number of items here as well. First two, the real property, or actually the first and the third, the real property taxes and star reimbursement. It shows us fully booked. Under the regulations for accounting for the tax levy, you book in a receivable for the full amount and the revenue for the full amount. So on the revenue side, it shows us here, on the receivable side, whatever's not collected through the course of September will still be there as a balance. Down towards the bottom, under basic formula, there's 470,000 noted. That is one of 3 months worth of our payments to the teachers' retirement system. They split out over September, October, November. Next line down, lottery aid, we did receive the scheduled lottery aid payment in September, which was a little over 1.8 million. And with that, we also got 22,000 of textbook aid. And then finally, we got 27,000 of Medicaid reimbursement during the month of September.
Any questions? If you were to look at these and say, is everything in line, you wouldn't change anything as far as your budget, what you're expecting?
On
by
the
the end
revenue
of the year?
side, no. Initially, we had bumped up the interest earnings to 30,000 because the T-bill rates were up. The T-bill rates have come down a little bit. I think we're still on track to meet that number, but everything else is pretty much what we're expecting on the revenue side.
Okay, thank you. And then the Treasury's report for September.
No comment on that.
Okay. Any questions? No? Can I get a motion to approve the Treasurer's report, please? Okay, Ms. Gaddishow, second? Okay, Ms. Powell, excuse me. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and that's approved. have an agreement for the 2019-20 capital outlay project. Can I get a motion to bring that to the floor to look at the contract with the firm Young Architectural LLC? Can I get a motion on that, please?
So,
Mr. Hawk, second on that?
A second.
Mr. Forrester, thank you. I'm going to ask you to just comment on that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slightly.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I want to thank the Facilities Committee, Mr. Hawk, Mr. Forrester, Mr. Jambrone, as well as Mr. Forbes for their assistance in interviewing 3 separate firms. Well, we had 8 firms respond to our request for proposals for both the capital outlay and the future building condition survey. And then we conducted interviews of 3 finalists a few weeks back. And as I corresponded previously, the Young and Wright was unanimously selected based on their presentation. And quite frankly, also the response from other superintendents I spoke with, their references were outstanding. So I'm looking forward to with your approval, working with this new firm.
If I could get a motion to bring that forward for approval. I did, thank you. Any other comments? No? From the facilities? You're okay? Okay. If I could get all those in favor of this, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And we have a contract with occupational and physical therapy, for occupational and physical therapy with Children's Educational Services. Can I get a motion to bring that forward, please?
So moved.
Mr. Forrester in a second. Ms. Powell-Ford, any discussions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we have a contract, teletherapy contract between TalkPath Live. Can I have a motion to bring that forward, please?
so
Mr. Johnson, and a second.
second.
Mr. Hawk. Is there any questions or comments on that? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forrester. Verbiage on that, that's fine. We also have a resolution for a standard workday for employee. Could I get a motion to bring that forward, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, and a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Gagenstotz. Any questions, comments on that?
If I could just briefly explain what this is, we had a change in hours for the nurse at Wheelock School last year, and New York State allows a 6 to 8 hour employee to get full service credit, because the last standard workday we had on file, if the state was less than 6 hours, we need to make an adjustment so that she's getting recorded on their system the way that she should be based upon her hours worked.
Thank you.
So it doesn't have anything to do with her pay, just her retirement benefits.
Just the resolution to
Credit.
present to the state certifying what her work day is.
Who seconded
I did.
Kristen.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other comments, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have a contract for the superintendent that we need to bring forward. Can I get a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Ms. Gagenstotz, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Hawk. The board has reviewed this. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Then we have we need a motion to approve the appointment of personnel to probationary position. Can I have a motion to bring that forward, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, can I get a second on that?
A second.
Mr. Johnson, any questions, concerns on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Brings us to administrator's report, right?
No, on the second page.
Those were all consent, right?
No, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's all under B.
A and B.
A and B. Thank you.
Probably should have pulled out C too.
We just do this? A and B?
Yeah, but B has 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Personnel excluding A and B. So the excluded B, and B got 4 parts.
Okay, I don't have 1, 2, and 3. C, A, B.
Say 2, 3, and 4, these are all the
That's it, all of it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is 1, 2,
Hold on, all of
3,
B.
4.
Yeah.
Oh,
Under B,
yeah, these are.
B has
4 parts.
Pulled out all of these.
Mhm.
So we allocate 2.
on the bottom of 3 and page, in the top of page 4. Okay. Are you in line here, Mr. Howard?
Sure.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the probationary appointment of Valerie Stein. Can I have a motion to bring that forward, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, and a second?
Second.
Ms. Fordman. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have, we need a motion for the approval of the probationary appointment of Michelle Hayden. Can I have a motion to bring that forward, please?
So
Mr. Johnson, and a second?
Second.
Ms. Powell Fordman. Any comments, concerns, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Then we have, we need a motion to approve the probationary appointment of Romeo. Can I have a motion to bring that forward, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, and a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay.
this is on the consent.
You want to do that now? Let's do it now. As part of our consent agenda that we approved at the very beginning of the meeting, we have item number C1, which is to approve the appointment of Paul DeFonso to the position of interim early childhood center at Wheelock School Principal effective November 5th, 2019. Mr. DeFonso, congratulations, we've already voted on it, so we can't hold you over a barrel and
I wish I would have known that, I would have left.
we can't make you squirm, we can't, throw our little jabs in, but I think we're all excited to see you at the Wheelock School sitting in the small chairs and.
Oh, I don't have a chair, I have a ball that I have to sit on. It's tough to be able
I'll
to.
give you a chair.
If you hear an explosion, it's the ball going on.
But we're all excited to have you at Wheelock.
I got it.
Can we do the pop in and stop and see you?
You stop in, Mr. Giambrone already stopped in today. He walked right by me, you should have known I'd be in the cafeteria. I mean, where I was
My
hanging out.
granddaughter's in Mrs. Foley's class, so.
Stop in and see me, I feel blessed, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Board, and Amy for putting up with me the last 2 days, and I'm going to just enjoy it. I've only stepped on 2 children so far, and I'm going to be very careful from now on. I'm only They're wonderful, and the parents have been very kind and patient with me. I'll do the best I can. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I truly do.
Yeah. Good to have you back.
I'm not a good squirmer either, Brian.
No. Great. Which leads us to item number 9, the administrator's report. And we have an update from Ms. Troutman on the middle school. Ms. Troutman?
Do you want me to give the update and then give the rest? Just keep going or just stop there?
Let's keep going.
Okay. So our scheduling committee has met 2 times since our last board meeting. We are working on transition minutes for our longer distance classes, so we're trying to make those adjustments so kids have more time to get to the classes that will take them longer to get to. We're also looking at adding additional minutes to our 7th and 8th grade lunches. We've heard the kids and the parents talk about that, so we're looking at ways of doing that. We're also taking a look for ways to have additional ways to provide AIS services for our students who are not receiving support within their classroom. So looking at other options for that to, again, support students. We started today to begin to work on multiple options of future schedules that will add the flexibility that we're hearing is important, that we knew was important and we value as well. And so we're working on those so that we can better meet the needs of our students. So that's where we're at right now. We're looking to do the first things that I talked about, adding minutes to transition time and the lunches and AIS. We're hoping to have something in place by January or in January, and then changing the schedule is a more long-term goal to accomplish.
Has the team talked about how, what the plan is to communicate any of those changes for the mid-semester?
I think we're really going to use our site-based team as much as we can, bring them in during the process, you know, getting their feedback, having them go out, sharing things. We've thought about, you know, do we have another parent meeting? Do we use our robocalls? Do we use our, you know, all the media that we have? So really trying to do a good job of communicating the changes.
We'll do that before we roll it out.
Correct.
Obviously. I knew the answer to that. Obviously, Mrs. Troutman. Okay.
So what are you hearing from the students?
A funny thing is we're really not hearing anything negative from students. I haven't had kids in my office complaining. Our teachers are reporting that our kids are very happy. They feel like their needs are being met, they're being successful. So that's what we're hearing.
And to the timing piece with a lot of piece in between
The
classes.
transition
Right.
time, I have to give hats off to the teachers because they have been flexible. They are, you know, they understand if a student is going from the 8th grade wing to our foreign language, they're giving the kids the time they need to get there. So we're being flexible, even though we're saying, you know, it's 2 minutes. We know that they need more time, and the teachers are giving more time.
Do you see a disruption in class with those students coming in later than the others?
No, because it's within just a, you know, 30 seconds, a minute of each other, so it's not like some are coming in and then 4 minutes later others are. They're pretty much traveling together.
And then the AIS piece, you had talked during the presentation about not wanting to be in that position of having those students have to choose between
Right.
chorus, band, orchestra.
So-
So I assume you're still keeping that in mind.
Yeah, so when we identify a student for AIS, we would want them to be in the classrooms where the support is provided. But if for some reason that can't happen, we're looking for alternate ways to make sure we're meeting our kids' needs.
Okay.
Do you have any parents come in and personally visit you? Like, I know we've had a lot, that are concerned, but have many visited you or?
Not lately,
to talk
but
about?
at the beginning of the school year, I would say I had probably anywhere from 5 to 7 parents that came in and spoke with me personally.
I was gonna ask also, I'm a newbie here, with the poll you took, and it looked positive, but I noticed there was 300 and some students, and maybe 50-some parents. Do you plan on doing another poll at some point, and if so, how do you get more to respond?
So students or parents or both?
Parents, because,
Right.
well, how many students do you have?
So we have about 470 students.
Oh, okay, so not all responded.
And we pushed it out to their email, so they choose whether they want to do it or not. We can't force them to do it. As far as parents, what we did was for parent-teacher conferences, we had a table out, so it was, anonymous, so that, no one had to feel like they were being watched. And so those parents, as they came through into the building, they had the opportunity to do it.
So it all comes back to communication with this, and, we want to encourage communication. And,
Sure.
A small cohort of 50-some parents just doesn't give you an accurate picture.
Sure.
So, I'm wondering how we can increase those numbers, in a future poll.
Sure.
I mean,
And that's something we definitely can look at, and how to reach more people. If they had access, to technology, we could send it out that way, but not everybody has that. So it would be something, maybe we'd have to use multiple means to get that out. But it's something we definitely can look into.
We're talking a lot about the communication of maybe what's going forward and some of these changes that we've talked about. And I know that we've done presentations here and different things. It still seems that there's not a consistent understanding of what is currently in place. So I'm just wondering, even though changes coming in January and we need to communicate those changes, are there opportunities between now and the changes to continue to provide some consistency and messaging around, this really is what's happening, this is, what's going on, just again, to really get us on a common footing. So, just, again, those opportunities for communication and where that might be in the planning.
I don't have that answer for you right now. I know we're always looking to communicate better, and we will continue to discuss it and try to figure out how to do that.
To that point, how did you reach the 50 parents that replied?
It was through our parent-teacher conferences that came in, and so we had a table, and we had the surveys on there, and they filled out the surveys and put them, in a container, so it was random, whoever signed up. We had 2 different nights that we did it, so
Okay. Have you tried electronically?
we haven't yet.
Okay. So that was the only means that
We did.
Do we have parent email addresses in our school?
I think we have some if the parents supplied them, but we don't have all.
Okay. That might be something we can try in terms of using SurveyMonkey or something similar.
Is there functionality on the website, if there was a link posted on the website to push people towards, with a robocall to go to the website and do a survey? We need individual emails. I don't know.
Yes,
Okay.
that is possible.
Going back to Ms. Pellefort's earlier comment about communicating, it struck us that there was a proliferation of a false narrative kind of out in the public. And I think that what she's really trying to get here is a consistent message of saying, this is what is not, but also really to address a lot of the questions that we saw last night at our town hall meeting. And to get some kind of a consistent message for these teams that are going out, for the teachers, you know, if we're gonna send a letter home with students or put something on our website, that it is a consistent message from everyone, and it's not, you're hearing this from this person, this from
And someone's
somebody
using
else.
different
And
language.
then it's confusing, and parents aren't quite sure what to think.
Sure.
So I thank you for that, and I appreciate that. But that communication message is something that we really need to work on.
So, in that end, are you done? Did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead on that.
So in that end, I shared with the board that I was going to start doing my own personal outreach to parents, and I did that. I started that today. I certainly didn't get 50 parent phone calls, but I got to about a half a dozen, and had some really good conversations with some parents. Once they realized I wasn't calling because their child was in trouble, because it's not every day you get a call from the superintendent at home, and there was a lot of positive feedback. And so I'm going to continue that. I'm selecting names randomly, starting with 8th grade, and I'll move through 7th grade eventually. Try and hit 5 to 10 phone calls a day for the next couple of weeks, and keep moving forward. But it brought me back to my telemarketing days in my early 20s. It was good. It was really good conversations. Learned something in each of those conversations as well. So I just want to let you know that I'm going to continue to do that.
And we talk about the time between classrooms, and we talked about cutting the lunch hour, or the lunch time to 20 minutes. And both of those things, we were told, was to help with a disciplinary issue. And it wasn't that there was a bad thing, but we were told that the more time kids spent in the hallway, the more time they had to do things they shouldn't be doing. And in the lunchroom, it was relatively quiet for the first 20 minutes because they were eating, and then after, it was like right at the 20-minute mark, the volume started going up, and that's when the disciplinary
So,
issues.
I want to correct you on that. Because
Okay.
that is not why we took the minutes away from passing time or lunch. We took those minutes so that we could add it to classes.
Okay.
And so we looked at how are we going to create more time for teachers to spend with students, and we couldn't lengthen the day. And so they had 4 minutes for passing time, and we saw that there was a lot of idle time with that 4 minutes. And so we thought if we took a couple minutes from there, and we noticed in lunches, after 20 minutes, after really 15 minutes, the kids were pretty much finished. And so we thought if we took 5 minutes,
Okay.
from there, at least 10 minutes, we could add that to class time. So it wasn't because of students misbehaving that we did that. It was because we needed that time in order to add additional time to our classes.
And that may be a good thing to communicate. And I was just going to ask if you've seen a decrease in disciplinary issues, and if not. And the second thing is, we've got more teachers in the classroom to assist with kind of a group teaching, and to help those students that one teacher may not be able to reach. I know it's very, very early in the school year. We're barely 2 months into this. Is there any feedback from the teachers as far as any of the academic increases? Are they seeing an improvement, even though it's early?
Even though it's early, we have heard that the kids are having success in the classroom. And I think if you talk to a lot of the kids, they feel successful in the classroom. And so I don't have data to back that up because it is too early, but just anecdotal. We're being told that, you know, the kids are feeling success, the teachers are seeing success in what we're doing. And so right now, you know, at this point, it's early, we do feel we're seeing some success.
So part of the narrative too, and part of the maybe the misnarrative, when we've heard about tracking is that the students' education is different depending on what their schedule shows. And you said repeatedly, your teacher said repeatedly that that's not the case. How can we get to some level of data collection horizontally in subject areas to ensure that all children are receiving a comparable or equal education?
To me, what we need are assessments. So interim assessments that everybody at the grade level would take so we could assess where we're at. Our teachers have already said they would like to be able to create their own because we have some assessments, but we're not overly pleased with what they're showing. But that's a huge endeavor to take on. And we are doing so much this year that I thought, you know, it's just too much to add that additional thing on our plate this year. Next year, will we want to maybe start to work on that? Absolutely. Because then you have an assessment for 8th grade math that you are going to give in November and all students will take it. And so that will show you that all students are receiving those same standards.
So you're talking like a quarterly test, in our lingo we call it a common formative assessment.
Yeah. And
a formative assessment means the teachers, it's certainly an exam for students, an assessment for students, and we still test students, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're not talking about state testing, we're talking about our own. And teachers would then use those results to look back at what standards the students mastered and which ones they need more work on.
And it will also help us to provide MTSS support. So it'll be able to help us identify kids who need additional reinforcement in certain areas.
I think the assessment and understanding and being able to measure is really critical. I guess one of the concerns that I have, and I think one of the things that we have heard also from parents, is the timing of this. So I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, you know, I have a lot of trust in our teachers, but if we're saying a whole year's gonna go by where we can't assess whether this is working the way we want, and then we're gonna, you know, start next year, and then if for some reason we're seeing pockets where maybe certain grade levels or certain classes, course curriculum is not, then we're gonna have how much more time to fix that, so then we're gonna have how many years of students that have gone through something where we can't say that this is doing what we want. So I guess there's, you know, and I get there's timing issues and the amount of work, but I do wonder about implementing without the ability to assess if we're successful.
So let me address that because I think we have multiple questions. Maybe I'm not understanding the question, but we do have ways to assess our students who are getting additional support. We have the ALEX program in math and we have iReady program in ELA. The problem is not all of our students are using that, but our kids that are getting the most support, we are assessing them. So we will have means to see their growth throughout the year.
Right, but this question of are all students getting the same, this horizontal comparison, we're saying that we can't assess that.
Well,
We're probably
I
assessing in
think
some
we
ways,
do. I
right?
mean, the teachers are assessing all their students. So there are, but we don't have the ones that go across through different teachers.
And I'm just trying to, again, be able to respond to, and, you know, that these are the
Sure.
questions that we're getting. And what data, how do we respond?
But we've never had that data, just so you know.
Can I just add, I was really pleased, I sat in with Paula and each other grade level teams in the middle school, and they had collected data on every student, and about every 6 weeks, we're taking a look with the whole team, 8th grade team, 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade team, looking at every student with the teachers and looking at their assessments that they have right now, whether it's iReady, whether it's Alex, whether it was state tests, classroom assessments, and we have talked about every single student and made some movements, made some changes, whether it's additional support, less support, but they are being really careful, and we're doing that about every 6 to 8 weeks, talking about every student with the whole grade level.
And so I think that's fantastic, and I think that's where we need to be very clear to say, and how can we package that again in an appropriate way that says we do have ways that we're monitoring and assessing,
Right.
even though we haven't gotten to the ideal state, right? It takes a long time to get to the ideal state, but what are we doing until we get there? And so I think, again, how are we communicating, packaging, and sharing that is really important.
Is there an end of year across the board test in sixth
Yes.
grade?
In all grades, yeah.
So that'd be a horizontal type situation, they all take the same test?
They have, and we haven't gotten to a point yet where we discuss, every year we kind of talk about end of year, but last year they did, yes.
So they will be doing that again this year? So that would be a horizontal test? Okay. I mean, that would be a fair time,
Sure.
it's been given a year to see where they're at.
Absolutely. And it should be standards-based. You know, that's what we're working on. We're really trying to talk about standards.
So I heard you say something in regards to, we never had that data. Okay, are you just looking back at what was established before you got here? Okay, so you're saying you have no data to go by?
We have the STAR data from the year before,
Right.
but we don't,
Does that,
we didn't collect data the way we are this year.
okay, so what you're doing now is a change?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, so it's a change to the way things were done,
yes.
all right. But with student achievements, how are you looking at this in a time fashion to actually being able to give us something that you could say, we need to change more, or we need to stay the way we're at?
Yeah. And I think by the end of the year, we're gonna have collected enough data through our MTSS process that we will be able to make those decisions.
Because it's both qualitative and quantitative data that we're collecting at that time.
Right. And then, so back to the group that we heard from a couple of board meetings, they had 6 points that they were trying to establish as to things that they felt needed to be addressed. All right? Tell me what you're doing with those 6 points.
Okay, well, I'm not prepared quite for that, but flexibility was one of them. And so we are trying to look at providing AIS. That was one of the things that they wanted, making sure kids we were meeting their needs. And so that was one thing that we're looking at. We're looking at, and it's not short-term, it's long-term, looking at scheduling that will allow more flexibility. We knew when we created this schedule, it was our starting point. We knew it wasn't perfect. We knew once we got into it and were living in it, we would change it and make it better. So right now, we're looking at that. And, you know, we have a couple schedules already that I am seeing already, we will have more flexibility moving forward. Communication was one of the things that they said. And so our site-based team has met already. We've talked about how we can use that team to push information out We talked to them about how is the best way to communicate with parents so that we can do a better job. They brought up the robocall. They said we robocall for everything. We need to do more of robocalling for this kind of information. They talked about data, and we are trying to collect data and build that. They wondered about how students were placed in our integrated classes in 7th grade and in the advanced classes in 8th grade, so the credit-bearing courses in 8th grade. So we had a system, and I presented that, where we looked at any state data we had. We looked at our STAR data. We looked at end-of-year exam data. We looked at averages. And we did talk to teachers about who they thought would be successful in those classes. That was the first time that we really tried to encompass data into those decision-making processes. So we've tried to really think about what they're asking.
So to that, the group of parents that have spoke, you know who they are. Have you invited them to be part of the site-based team?
One person that came forward that was indirectly part of that group. I did invite her, and she is on the site-based team. I did not reach out to them, but.
I mean, is it something that they can attend?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. And the parent group, have you reached out to them?
I have not.
Okay. Is that against school policy or?
I have to take direction.
So certainly, I
You're
get,
taking the lead on that, huh?
well, yeah, partially, and I certainly wanted to see, experience last night's town hall meeting, before I advised, which way to go. I met with some parents last Friday, I think it was, for the parents who actually, 3 of the 4 parents who authored the letter. We had a really good conversation, and then Mr. Aldrich and Ms. Paulsford and I attended the town hall meeting last night. I did receive an email late this afternoon thanking them for attending, but I do think it makes a lot of sense to open up communication with them. I like the idea of inviting them to attend the site-based meeting. You're welcome to reach out as well, and maybe even do that together. I'm certainly open to joining your site-based team if I can fit it in.
I mean, I just view this all as change, it's only change. And somehow, as you say, communication isn't reaching them to understand what change is happening and how it's affecting their kids, and it's very important to them, obviously. Okay.
And then dissenting opinions sometimes really help us to improve, and no matter what we're doing.
One last, if I may, just kind of crosses between the assessment and the communication piece. So as we're thinking about moving into the spring and changes with January and the assessments, so 6th grade is really kind of a critical year for, students then to being placed and having these opportunities for some of these accelerated class. Do you anticipate some type of targeted 6th grade communication in the spring prior to?
Actually, we've talked about some things that we'd like to do in the future, that we almost would like to start to have those conversations with incoming 5th grade
I think
parents.
that's a great idea.
And so we discussed that at our committee meeting today. But this year, before December gets too far on us, I would like to send a letter out to people, parents of 6th graders, and invite them in to meet with us to discuss what does it all mean,
Great.
so that they have a good idea. And I think that, the suggestion today of starting at 5th grade makes even more sense.
Totally
Because
agree.
then, they know what the future brings. And so those are the things that we're discussing and trying to get into place.
And I think just, because I think robocalls are great and letters home are great, but if it's happening to my child right now, or, I'm going to hopefully be
Right.
more involved tuned in and having that opportunity where there's an action I can take, right? If it's
Right.
coming in, if it's talking about what's gonna happen next year. So I think you have a better hook
Yes.
on those parents. So I think those are great ideas.
And Jeff suggested that, you know, as we build kids' schedules, that parents are invited in to meet with Amy to, you know, talk about what are the options and what is the future. And I think that's, you know, really a great idea. And I've seen that done in other districts with great success. Because some people know, but we have a lot of parents that really don't. And them being able to hear of what are the options and what this can mean for future is really, you know, important for them.
Perfect. Great.
I think those are both great initiatives, very good.
And one of the things that I've heard from several board members, Mr. Hawkins, California, is we've kind of gotten behind the curve on this communication. And we really need to be proactive in getting out and it's gonna take a lot of effort to get ahead of this, because as we found out last night, there's a lot of misinformation. I think that there's a lot more conversation we can have on this, and we just need to have a game plan for that communication.
And we're going to, and part of that too, is we look district-wide, there's an impact on our high school. You know, there certainly is, and so, you know, Paula and Darren and I are certainly gonna get together along with Amy when she comes back from her relaxation vacation. About what the implications are as we move forward, and we've talked a lot about on-ramps. And I'm a big fan of on-ramps, because we don't decide a child's life at 11 years old in sixth grade. Everyone, you know, grows and changes at their own pace. So it's really important that those opportunities are there as children get older, either to get off a ramp or to get on a ramp. And that's something that we're really gonna have to bring the high school into that discussion.
Thank you.
At this time, we have a time set aside to hear from the public, where the board has reserved time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board on any topic are asked to stand there and give their name and address. Limit of comments to 5 minutes or less. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on any comment? Okay, we'll close that. Announcements and board correspondence. The next regular Board of Education meeting will be held Tuesday, November 19th, right here at 6 o'clock. And rather than the second and fourth, remember this, it's the first and third Tuesday in November.
Well, there is a holiday in
Yeah.
that. It would have been a long one.
Okay. With that, anything else, Ms. Trumman?
I do have a lot.
Okay.
I will make it quick. Some of our 8th graders traveled to Chicago, October 24th to the 27th with Mr. Wright and some of our middle school teachers. I have asked Mr. Wright to bring a group of students in to present to you so they can talk about their trip and all the things that they learned, but they said they had an absolutely marvelous time. Next week, we will start our gratitude week in the middle school. Students and adults in the building will have opportunities to share who and what they are grateful for through various activities that Danielle Roberts and Amy Gavazzi are working on. So we're really excited about that. Jamie Paul Hamus is taking a team of teachers to Iroquois next week to see and discuss their MTSS program and hopes to bring back ideas to make our program even better. Amy was very helpful in getting that set up for our team. Some of our 7th graders are taking a trip to Washington, D.C. this weekend, and we're excited to hear about their experiences. And when they come back, I will make sure they come in and talk about that trip with you. The Canadian Brass will be here this Thursday to provide an assembly for some of our kids, and they're like world renowned, so we're very excited for them to come in, and thanks to Mr. Bennett for arranging that. Let's see, a group of middle school teachers, along with myself, are attending a Western New York STEM meeting this Friday in hopes to learn about some STEM opportunities that we'll be able to bring back for our students. So we're very excited about that. And then lastly, our grade 7 students, all of them traveled last Thursday to Letchworth State Park. And they did some hiking and learning about the park. Mr. Wag organized it. It's a grant that he fills out. They pay for the busing, and they have a ranger that's there, and they do some learning and they do some hiking, and the pictures were absolutely amazing. And the kids had a really great time.
Mr. Drown, what's happening in the elementary school?
We've been reading, and at the elementary level, we've had this little thing called the Reading Stamina Challenge. We've been making these videos of kids reading for an extended amount of time, and then they challenge another class. Another class has to like respond and read for a little bit longer than the class before them. So most recently, our school challenged an elementary school up in Orchard Park, Igert Elementary. They submitted a video to us saying they accepted the challenge. They showed us reading. They challenged us back. And tomorrow we're going to film a new challenge. We're challenging we don't know it yet. We're challenged. We're doing our part here to get kids reading. So it's fun. That's what we've been doing. So it's fun. The kids are excited about it.
Bring any dry ice?
Oh yeah, well we had the dry ice for Halloween. I was a scientist, so yeah, we did a little hands-on experiment. I had an opportunity to go into all the classrooms, and it was good to return to my roots as a science teacher and get in front of kids again, doing some stuff. So we had a lot of fun. It was cool.
Ms. Mike?
Well, we are partnering with the elementary school to do Veterans Day cards for our troops with the university. Send some packages over for Veterans Day, so thanks Mark for getting some teachers on board to do that as well. But mainly I want to thank the board for your support and having Mr. DeFonso join me the last couple of days.
I opened 92 milk.
He's giving a true appreciation for
I only have 2 pairs of pants that fit me, and I have to watch out for the ketchup packet.
I've done nothing but laugh the last couple of days, so thank you for that.
Where did you go? You guys thought it was okay.
But in all
I'm thirsty
honesty,
too.
the kids are happy, they love him already, the teachers have just been smiling, so thank you for your support on that. Thank you for bringing Mr. DeFonso back, we really appreciate it.
Great.
Great to have him back.
Thank you. Mr. Forbes?
A couple things. First, the external audit report is going to be ready for presentation at the next board meeting, which means we need to have an audit committee meeting prior to that. Currently, the board has Mr. Forrester and Ms. Gagnischatz on the committee, because Mr. Bob Seam was the third member, and of course he resigned, so the board is going to need to look to fill that seat. You may also recall that the board passes a motion that allows any board member to attend those meetings, so that would be another way to not have to do anything with an appointment beforehand, because anybody could attend. Listen.
Okay.
There's that. As far as the business office assistant school business position, we've gone through the applications preliminarily, and what we found is that some of the people applied through the Observer, some of the people applied through the district. The Observer's application is very lean in terms of information. So with Mr. Rada's assistance, we've sent letters to those individuals asking them to fill out a district application by next Friday. Anyone who had filled out an application, we gave them the opportunity to add anything to the resume that they may wish to add. And the intent would be to get interviews going sometime within 7 to 10 days after next Friday. In the meantime, I've been working on different components of a job description, which I need to share with Mr. Certicio, and also some potential interview questions to try to gauge. Looking at it quickly, we had a really wide range of people, so I'm trying to tie the questions in so that it's applicable to everybody. But we're moving down the road for that. And finally, my apologies to Mr. Hawk, I don't understand exactly what he's looking at, so if it's okay with the board and Mr. Hawk, I'd like to meet with him after the meeting, and then we can bring anything back that is relevant to the board.
I'd like to say I'd love to meet with you, but I'd like to hear your response to those 2 items, because there's $335,000 discrepancy in those 2 lines, and how it ended last year and how we presented it this year.
If you'd like to show exactly what you're looking at, I can do that, because I'm not saying.
Line 161 and line 160.
1621, 160?
they're highlighted on last year's, and 1620161.
Well, on the June report, in the 1620160, which is the buildings and grounds salary line, on this report, it's zeros across the board. On the next line, the 1620161, it's a current appropriation amount of $451,000 with a final expenditure of $441,000 for a net difference of $10,000.
Okay, so do you have this year's budget status in front of you?
Yes?
Okay, because this year you have 516,000 allocated in those two lines.
That's correct, and when the October report comes, you'll see the adjustment, because if you look at the line below, you'll see that they're all the way over to the right-hand side.
When you say the line below, would you identify it?
Yes, I'm talking about the September 30th report now. On the 162160 code, which is the buildings and grounds salary line, I budgeted $504,000. Currently, as an expense, there is zero, so if you come all the way over to the right, it's showing a active balance of $500,000, because there's been nothing spent against it. If you go down to the next line, I budgeted $12,500. In that expenditure line, there's currently $131,000, which represents the year-to-date expense for the custodial salary. That should be in the line above it. If you come all the way over to the right, it shows as a negative $420,000.
Stop right there. I understand what you're saying, but you're clouding it by bringing us over to the next columns, because it's a basic addition and subtraction piece, and then there is the outcome of last year, which is $182,278.
The $182,000 on last year's report is the total
For both
expense in
lines.
those codes.
Both lines, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because, and the reason I use both lines is because this year, you're commingling them.
The coding is causing that to be the case, but you basically right now on this report, because those two lines are not correct, need to net them.
So my original question was, because they're commingled, why did we need $335,000 additional monies applied to those two lines?
That's a good question. I need to look at my budget line and see what I've got coded there. Looking at this quickly, it appears to me as though it's not in the right category on the original appropriation, which is causing it to come across incorrectly.
So where does that money, and that was my question this evening, where does that money go? Where are you placing that $335,000 if it's inappropriately categorized?
I would have to see why it's off here, and then I could answer that question for you.
Thank you.
What's the best way to get that information to the board in the next day or two? Email it out to you,
Well, yeah, I mean, you could email it, but I'd like to hear a public comment to it also.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Forbes?
Nope, that's all, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reagan?
I was not here for the October 22nd board meeting because I was at a 4-day conference that was focusing on human resources, on personnel. It was the very first non-instructional conference I'd ever attended. So I was dealing with people who, in a lot of cases, never were teachers in a classroom. It was an amazingly eye-opening experience. I feel like I know more than I did before, so it was a very good conference, so it was well worth it.
If I may come back in.
Yeah.
It's right in front of me and I didn't see it. The lines that Mr. Hawk is asking about, on the June 30th, 2000 report, he is highlighted on his report and asked about two lines that are $182,000 of salary. That is code 1621, which is our custodial line. The $500,000 that you're referring, or I'm sorry, the maintenance line. On the September 30th report, the lines he's questioning is the custodial line, so it's two different departments, and you're not comparing the same lines. If you want to compare the same lines, If you look at the June 30th report on 16/20/161, there's 477,000 budgeted. Last year, there's 504 budgeted this year, which reflects the salary increases. If you look at the 16/21 code for both years, it's 152,000 last year and 157,000 this year, which is the expenses for the building and maintenance department.
Okay, so let me see my sheet. Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
Mr.? Nothing? Okay. We have a late newcomer, back, return. And I'm hoping that you're going to fill us in on what you were doing for the past 45 minutes.
I had chocolate cake. We had our induction ceremony for the National Honor Society. We inducted 38 new members tonight, all students who have a 92% or higher weighted average.
Wow.
Outstanding class of students. Great program, completely run by the students. They really wanted to run it themselves this year. They set it up. It was very well done. Very, very well done, so I'm proud of them. If I may also mention, we're going to be giving the Panorama Social Emotional Learning Survey this week, Wednesday and Thursday, during our phys ed classes. Also, the Model UN is going to be going out this weekend to compete, so we're excited for them. They had a fantastic year last year, and we're looking forward to another great year this year. We have a Veterans Day Assembly on Friday around 9 a.m. We'll be inviting people from the public in. Also, just for the high school, we'll be having that ceremony. Next week, Kate Summer, an English teacher for our school, Mr. Certisio and I will be heading to Washington for the National Blue Ribbon Award Ceremony, so we're excited for that. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Certisio?
Just a couple of updates with our capital projects, since Darren told you I'm going to Washington next week. That was my big announcement.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's your award. I'm there to support you and Ms. Summer. So, and you know, when I congratulated your faculty, all the work was done long before you ever knew me. So, I'm just proud to be able to support you. Finally, have some dates about some door installations. You know, our secure entryways. And it does look like most of the work is going to be completed through the month of November, and leaking a little bit into the first week to week and a half of December. So we finally have a plan in place. The email I'm looking at here is from our contractor, and discusses how their subcontractor has been caught on another job that is going to be with us in full force in a very short period of time. And of course, we will work with our building administrators to make sure that that's a smooth operation, and we've already started to do that. I believe Friday after hours, that's what I told you, correct?
Yes.
That the demo for the exterior door at the high school main entry will begin, and we will have functional doors on Tuesday. So we were first to get that. We also have some, we're also going to rearrange their schedule a little bit, particularly at the event entrance, to make sure we're not interfering with some winter concerts that we have coming up. Okay. Middle school, you should have the conference room turned over to you in a very short period of time. They're doing some finishing work in there, and then those adjustments we made to the student services suite are just going to delay that maybe a week or two. So that's pretty exciting. Mr. Drillinger, I don't have dates for you. We're getting there.
It looks good.
It does look good. So I did provide the facilities committee an Excel spreadsheet. To reiterate, we are under budget with this project. We've been under budget for the entirety of the project. Therefore, we've been able to do a number of additional things. A number of the change orders that you approved were for additional scope by choice, and some were additional scope by upgrading the design that was provided to us. And then we do have some items that are under consideration for inclusion in the project. So I did provide the facilities committee with a spreadsheet with somewhat of a rank order of some of those extra things that we can do. There'll be more done on the project, and we just need to get together and decide definitively what we're going to do.
With the sheet, it gives dollar amounts as to what we're looking at. What's the spend down?
330,000 we have left. And those costs that the construction management company calls them conservative, but they're conservative to the positive side. So the estimate of the actual cost is less than what those numbers are. You know that was
Are these prices according to what the architects or the,
construction management. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
okay.
And when you change orders, it'll be back up above those.
I'm twitching now, Mr. Aldridge.
How about the sign in front?
So the sign out front, there's still a little bit of brickwork that needs to be completed. Doug Prince and Ms. Slagle were working on getting a little training today on how to get it going. I know Doug was working on that most of the afternoon. We had it up and running a little bit, but it needs some fine tuning, so we're close, we're really close.
Okay. Mr. Ott, do you have anything?
Yeah, I want to apologize to Mr. Forbes for constantly, asking the same question, but I think that even you had a hard time looking at
Well,
those.
I was not following you, and I think we were on two different places with it, so.
Yeah, okay. And then to what Mr. Rada said, what did you bring back for the district with the seminar you went to?
Oh, my goodness. A much better understanding of the Family Medical Leave Act, much better understanding of hiring processes, difference between classified and unclassified employees, civil service expectations, a whole plethora of things. I'm still trying to filter it all down.
And how do you plan on helping other employees with that information? How do you pass that on?
I think what we're going to really looking at doing is to clarifying a lot of our policies and practices. And first and foremost, I think, Mr. Certisi was giving me the task of cleaning up WinCap, which is our business office software, and is a lot of personnel. We've never used the HR side of it before, so we're getting that information accurate and up to date. Quite the process.
You're also working on establishing hiring guidelines for our district and what that means and what our process is. And we've done a lot of work on that. It's in a review stage, and at some point we'll share it with the board as well.
I just have one thing. I'm scheduled to go to the BOCES board meeting tomorrow. But I have a soccer banquet, which I would prefer not to miss. So if anyone wants to swap with me and go tomorrow, that would be awesome.
We can talk about that. We can talk about that.
Yes. So,
Okay.
that's all I have.
I don't have anything, just one question for Mr. Peschke. Do you know for the Veterans Assembly on Friday, will the event doors be open? Or
Yes. Yep, we are going to use the event doors, and we will have sign-in procedures set up in the lobby.
Perfect, great,
Yes,
thank you.
good question.
Mr. Johnson?
I'm good,
No? Okay.
I'm good.
Must be you had a good lunch today. If there is nothing else, since there's no further business, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Gagos, in a second.
Second.
Ms. Paul-Fortner. All in favor? All opposed? You're adjourned.
Great,
Thank you.
There might be some in the lobby, you can make your way that way.